Are you ready, Tom?
Yeah, ready to stream.
Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our full council meeting on Thursday, the 10th of December 2020. This will be a remote meeting, a virtual meeting with remote attendance by councillors and remote access of press and public, and will be held in accordance with the provisions of the local authorities and police and crime panel, coronavirus, flexibility of local authority and police and crime panel meetings, England and Wales, regulations 2020. So I'd like to start the meeting by welcoming members of the public and the press, and to Paul Dossett from our auditors, Grant Thornton. Would you please, councillors, all stay on mute until asked to speak? But if I miss you, please butt in. In our voting, silence means for. But speak up, please, if you're against or if you're abstaining. I will now hand over briefly to the monitoring officer for our roll call. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. So if I read out your name, can you please confirm that you are present so that we are clear who is on the call? I will go through in order of the list on the website. So Councillor Dean.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Adrian Davis.
Present.
Councillor Francis. Present. Councillor Legg.
Yes, I'm present.
Councillor Marcus.
Present.
Councillor Roger. Councillor Roger? No. Okay. Councillor Smith?
Yes.
Councillor Watt?
Present.
Councillor Williams?
Present.
Councillor Bartley?
Yes, me.
Councillor Bartley? No. Councillor Dorian Smith?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick? Present. Councillor Guy?
Present.
Councillor Mumford?
Present.
Councillor Mellams?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Sims? Councillor Sims? Is there any councillor present that I've not named, just in case? Okay. So in that case, we have absence from Councillors Roger, Councillors Lady Bartley, and Councillor Sims.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you.
The first item on our agenda are declarations of interest, please. Do we have any?
Yeah, Councillor Dean, non-pecuniary interest in item 12, so I'll leave the meeting for that.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to declare that I represent the Council on the Cornwall Partnership Trust and the Local Enterprise Partnership, and therefore I would like to declare an interest in any related items. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, if any conversations sort of go in towards waste management staffing, I'll declare an interest in that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, just a non-pecuniary in item 8, I intend to enter the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other declarations, please? Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to the minutes of our previous meeting in July. Does any member have any issue with those minutes, please? Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chair. There's a slight discrepancy about the amounts quoted for the discretionary fund, which I will clarify with Andy Thomas after the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So do I have a proposer for the adoption of those minutes, please? And a seconder? Councillor Mumford, thank you. The seconder?
The second, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Nellams. Anybody against the adoption of the minutes, please? And they're adopted. Thank you very much indeed.
And they're subject to finalisation of the figure mentioned by Councillor Brottick.
Yes, certainly. Thank you. We move on to item 3 on our agenda, which is Chairman's announcements. I just have 2 announcements to make. First of all, I just wanted to mention that I represented the council at the recent funeral of Michael Gray, who many of you will know was a very long-standing councillor for St Mary's and very well respected. I attended that on our behalf. I would also like to welcome new head teacher from Five Islands Academy, Rachel Gibb. I'd like to welcome her to the islands and hope she has a very happy and successful time with the school. Now move on to item 4 on our agenda, which are questions under Standing Order 14, which I have none. Item 5 on our agenda is to consider reports from committees, including the receipt of minutes. We do have a number of reports, and the first one is our scrutiny. And I'd like to hand over to Councillor Mumford to introduce. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I take it that everybody's read the minutes. I'd just like to make one comment that we are chasing up the X-ray position because we're coming up to October. Health Watch have chased it up and they've said they can't do it, but we're going to have another go at them to try and persuade them to change to a Thursday instead of a Wednesday. So that's ongoing at the moment. Otherwise, I'll take it that everybody's read the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions at all? No, thank you. The next meeting is the Health and Wellbeing Board. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The minutes are still in draft form until our next meeting later this month. I just wanted to draw members' attention to the Public Health Annual Report, which was presented to us. It was produced pre-COVID, which was quite refreshing, but it really focused on how the local environment impacts upon the general health and well-being of a community. There was a suggestion that it comes to full council in due course, so perhaps Stephen could advise on that. But I'd certainly like members to take the chance to read that if possible.
Certainly through you, Chairman. That has been raised also by Councillor Smith, if I remember rightly, and we will be taking it to the October meeting.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. The next meeting minutes we have is that of the IFCA. Councillor Guy.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to present the minutes of the Inshore Fisheries Conservation meeting on the 11th of the 6th. Taken as read, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? No. The other 2 meetings we had were that of the recently formed Engagement Board, which I chair, which are also in your pack. Are there any questions, please? No. Well, thank you. That concludes the minutes of our various committees that we've had in the last recent period.
So can we please note those, Chairman?
Sorry?
So can we please note receipt of those minutes, those draft minutes?
You want to repeat them?
No, can you please note? Can you ask the councillors to note for the record? Thank you, Chairman.
We are noting them, thank you. Are there any objections to the noting of those minutes? Okay, then they are noted. Thank you very much. We move on to item 6 on our agenda, which is to consider motions in accordance with Standing Order 12. I have none. Item 7 on our agenda is urgent items, and I have one urgent item, which is the Isles of Scilly IFCA participation in the European Interreg project Fish Intel, which I will hand over to Senior Officer Nicholas Stinson, Senior Manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for taking this as an urgent item for the Council. The opportunity here is for the Isles of Scilly IFCA to take part in an international research project around crawfish. To make this happen, the IFCA need to be able to identify the Council as the accountable body for the funding and for the Council to also cash flow the project until payments are received from the funders. It's important, this project, because crawfish are an important species to the island, and it will give us a better understanding of the species and their activities and inform future management of them. The project uses a network of telemetry receivers on the seabed with 6 transmitters on the crawfish shell, and that allows daily and seasonal movements to be monitored. Final decision whether to submit an application for the inclusion within the project sits with the IFCA committee itself, but the committee are seeking council support and confirmation of cash flows of the project. There's a limited financial risk to the council, and the Section 151 officer has confirmed that in the report. The recommendations are set out in the supplementary document. There are 2 recommendations. One's just supporting the submission to provide the cash flow support and be the accountable body for the funding, and to authorise myself to be the signature for the letter of engagement. The recommendations are before you, Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. I'd like to hand over to the Chairman, Councillor Guy.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Once again, members, apologies for the late paper. The reason being, as Nicola stated, a letter of engagement needs to be submitted by the 4th of October, so that's the reason it's come to this meeting today. Can you please take this agenda item as read in the report? And I would like to propose the recommendation 1 and 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Guy. Before I take the recommendation, are there any questions, please, from councillors?
Yeah, Councillor Legg.
Marcus?
Harry, you can go first if you want. That's fine.
Well, I was going to second Councillor Guy's proposal and just say that as a former and future fisherman currently not fishing, that this project is really good. It should demonstrate the strengths of the fishery, and I would support it fully.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus?
Cheers. 2 questions. How will a potential no-deal Brexit affect this? Is there some indemnity for the council against any increased costs? And in terms of Brexit as well, I imagine there will be some increased pressure on the patrolling nature of the IFCA. Is this all manageable and maintainable? Is this project manageable within those confines, and maybe increased workload in that regard?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Do you want me to come next? All right.
I can start if you want, Andy.
Yes,
I think
Carol.
the crystal ball of Brexit is still beyond everybody, I think. But I think in terms of the capacity to deliver this and the opportunity this creates, it's not one to be missed. And the team have got the resource and have planned their workload around further research. Because if you think the balance of the work of the IFCA team is to do research, knowledge, understanding and management, as well as enforcement. So there's a balance there to be had, and they've managed this within their existing workload and are very keen to increase the amount of research, and that's set out in the business plan that the IFCA committee have approved.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I?
Just to come in there again, Robert, I mean, the Chief Officer's job, which is Tom Hooper, is to look for external funding to help the IFCA and the finances of the IFCA, which is why he's prepared this paper to try and go ahead with it. So basically, that's why we're just seeking members' approval.
Okay.
Brexit's another story.
Okay. Thank you. Are you satisfied with that, Councillor Marcus?
Well, in terms of Brexit indemnity, no, not really, because no one's got an answer. But I support the project. Sounds really interesting. So yeah, I would second the second, if you like. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you, councillors. We have a proposer and a seconder, two seconders. Is there anybody?
Sorry, Chairman. Perhaps if we take it that Councillor Legg proposes and Councillor Marcus seconds as Councillor Guy is the chairman of the committee that is involved, so it made it clearer.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Are there any councillors against the two recommendations, please? No, then that's carried. Thank you very much. So we move on now to agenda item 8 on our agenda, which is our COVID report. I would just like to state before we take the report, I would like to state my thanks to all our council staff and our partners for the work that they have done around COVID. I know I've thanked you before, but there's been so much work done on this, and I would also like to thank the community and to thank our visitors for the way in which they have reacted to this pandemic in the safe way possible that this has been able to be played out, so that we have not yet had COVID cases on the islands, and we hope that that will remain the case. And I would ask that we all remain vigilant and we continue to make sure that we observe all the government guidelines, because we're not out of the woods yet. As you well know, there's more restrictions in us, and it's reliant on us to set the example and to make sure that we remain COVID-free on the islands, if at all possible. So thank you very much, everybody, for your commitment over this pandemic, and for your future commitment to keeping us all safe. Thank you. And with that, I will hand over to Nicola Stinson, the Senior Manager, but I would just like to add another comment to my previous remark, and that is to advise you all that your officers and staff have done a tremendous job in preparation, and your council is very well prepared if we do unfortunately get a case on the island. So I would just add that comment. With that, I'll hand over to you, Nicola.
Thank you, Chairman. And this, I think, is part of the end of a chapter of our journey, really, which is about the preparations we have in place in terms of dealing with an outbreak. So we've called this the final report for now, and we will report as required moving forward. But this brings together the last piece of the jigsaw, if you like. The team have already established the policies and the process and the procedures to cover a range of scenarios here on the islands to keep the city safe. And the final piece in that jigsaw is this containment framework, which is in the appendices, which sets out our local prevent, contain and management response should there be an outbreak. And that's really important because it clarifies the roles and responsibilities and the legal powers that we have should there be an outbreak here, and it will allow swift action to take place. Prevention is always the first thing to do, and then we will maintain our communication around prevention and our work with our environmental health team and public health with local businesses to give them the support and advice that they need to keep COVID secure and safe. So the first thing is to note the containment framework and authorise the Chief Executive to act upon it. That will allow us to work not only with businesses and places to ensure we maintain safety, but also to think about how we open places up should we have to close them down as well. So that's the first thing first, is that that's the final bit of procedure, if you like, that we need to finish in terms of all the work that's required to keep the island safe. I think one of the most remarkable things we've been able to achieve here is the testing, the bespoke testing for the island. And I think that has really served us well, and it's been hugely beneficial to both residents and visitors. And we continue to work with our partners to keep the island safe. One thing that's playing on our mind, obviously, has been the weather. We've tested the testing capacity of the islands through good weather, bad weather, difficulty to transport because of the weather, and off-island services as well. So we've been able to deal swiftly with testing, and I think the record was less than 24 hours for an off-island test to be sent to the labs and the results received, and that's comparable with the best in the country. Moving forward, I think one of the concerns we've got is that whether there's an opportunity to seek rapid testing on the island. So there's some new testing kits being developed, and ideally we'd like to continue to lobby for on-island testing kits to be provided so that we can make sure that throughout the winter months when transport's difficult, we have some testing some on-island testing capacity. So we're seeking council support to continue to lobby to get that kit over here, especially useful over the coming months. The other issue that's highlighted in the report is around our economic recovery and the importance of transport, which underpins that recovery and the economy of the islands. And we've put a proposal in there that relates to reducing the fees and charges that have put in place for the opening of the airport on Sundays. In order to ensure we get people on and off the islands throughout the COVID period, we've had to open on Sundays, and Council have set fees and charges at a more premium rate on Sundays. We'd like to see that reduced to reflect the need to do that as a matter of day-to-day normal business throughout the COVID period. So the recommendation, I think it's recommendation, I'm looking for it, 5 of on the papers, that seek to reduce the costs to normal run-of-the-mill business-as-usual costs for Sundays for our operators to help with that economic recovery and ensure services are continued. For us, in terms of costs, I think the Council has been able to embed COVID Secure in the way we're serving our public, and there are a number of things that we're now looking at in terms of how we make sure we maintain COVID Secure within the workplace, and that is reflected in some increased cleaning costs that are covered up in the report, and we'll use COVID funding to ensure that those increased costs this year are funded from that government funding. Russell's done some work in the paper around the finances, but I think what's really important to note at this point in time that whilst there has been increased costs and reduced income, we're still expecting to achieve a balanced budget at year end. So I think for now, just to note that we've got 6 recommendations for you there. The key ones, as I say, are really to note the containment framework, ensure the Chief Exec's got the powers to implement that, and to note those reduced fees. I don't know if there's anything else that Russell would like to add to the report, but otherwise over to you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Russell, would you like to come in?
No, I think I'm all right, Chair. I think it's clearly articulated in the report, and I take it the members have read it about the Council's financial position and all the financial implications of COVID. If there are any questions, I'll answer those as we go.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillors, are there any questions from you on this report, please? No? Well, thank you very much. Councillor Mumford, thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to ask a question. I believe there's some new grants for businesses. I just wondered whether that had been advertised widely, because the discretionary grants, there's not going to be any extra money. I wondered whether there could be support for some of the small businesses through the new grant. Nicola, perhaps you could answer that question for me. Has it been widely advertised? I believe it came into operation on the 2nd of September.
Yes, there were some what are called kickstart grants for businesses, for tourism businesses. It was heavily oversubscribed. We thought it would be. We promoted it through the Islands Partnership, and within 40 minutes, the funding had been exhausted. So it was first come, first served approach. There is some further funding to come, and we're lobbying MHCLG for some further funding to put into that pot, but there's obviously a demand for further support. I think for us, the discussions we're having with the Island Partnership and with the LEP, it's about getting the evidence from businesses about what the future needs are going to be. And I know everyone's in the here and now, and everyone's trying to eke out this season as long as they can. But I think there comes a time of reckoning where we just need to get the evidence collated so that we can then start lobbying for further funding that's required for the island. So that's the next stage, really. I've been speaking to Nick Bond at the Island Partnership about how we go about that, and the LEP chairman will be visiting the islands on the 24th of September, where that conversation will be started.
Okay, thank you. And the discretionary grants, as we've been told, there is no more money. Could I ask that everybody who has applied for those grants be notified officially that there is no more money? Because I don't know whether they have been or not, but I presume not.
We'll make sure that some communications goes out on that. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'd certainly like to back up the comments on the testing. I think the procedures we've got are incredibly good and, very welcome. And I think the speed testing will be, very, very interesting to see. Following on from Councillor Mumford's comments, I'd just like to back up what she says. And I think this really highlights that we just have, we've got 89 businesses who have received only 1/3 of the financial support they asked for. That is quite a serious situation. And I think we need to, really keep on the pressure to government. To be quite honest, I feel like government's really let businesses like this down, that have not got the top-up grants. And, yeah, it's not a sustainable situation because businesses have been hit really hard here. So I think that's got to be a priority for council. Just a question to Nicola on the airport. I assume, I agree with the principle of this, but just checking this, I assume this is only for Sunday flying when we've got bad weather in previous days. This isn't an opening up of the airport regularly on a Sunday.
I'll just check with Aisling, actually, but my understanding is that due to bad weather, they've had to open on additional Sundays.
It follows a formal request by an operator based on the goodwill of staff to come in and work. But it's just to understand that we want to support our operators in kickstarting the economy, and it applies simply this season, and it will be reviewed as the situation progresses.
But it's not opening the airport regularly on a Sunday, then?
No.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you. And then just to comment, there's some very interesting discussion there in the economic recovery section. I would just like to fly the flag for some financial opportunities around more local food production. I think there's real opportunities there. And just also on tourism, I think there's some serious opportunities for providing more affordable and sustainable tourism. It's a real growing market. There's a lot of carbon conscious consumers out there, and I think the islands can really provide that sort of holiday. So that would just be my 2 pennies worth there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to have seen some reference to hardship funding in there and the role the council has to play, particularly as we go towards winter and some of the income starts to perhaps feed in terms of revenue from tourism. So I'd like just to keep that on the radar. It's not really a question, it's just an observation. I think we as members also have to think, if we're going to take a new normal, how we address some of these issues. We've obviously had the Tuesday evening sessions, but they've become quite operational in some of those conversations. I think we've got to give some thought about how we take on some of the strategic challenges. We've spoken about doing finance workshops, but I suspect we probably need workshops on all sorts of things. Corporate property is something which every time I walk through the town and see the town hall, the library, the museum, go past the sports hall, there's all sorts of things that we need to get our head around. And I think we just need to give a bit more thought to how we're going to achieve that in a post-COVID world.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. And I would just reiterate that now that we are hopefully through the sort of difficult areas of the pandemic, I say that with caution, but now that we're well prepared, the Council is absolutely focused on all these priorities, and it will be our complete focus over the next month or two to get the strategy ironed out for our priorities in the next few months. Councillor Marcus, please.
Cheers. Yeah, just going to ask about the cleaning, basically. Is that £40,000 extra cost for keeping things as they are at the moment? Because they're, not all the offices are open. Do we as councillors need to make some difficult decisions about keeping offices permanently closed?
Okay, Chairman, if I could take that one. That's based on opening all of our existing buildings and be COVID secure. There's a separate question, I think, about what we do with our estate, and I think that's absolutely one for a workshop. But the cleaning costs that are included in this report are assuming that all our existing buildings open in the COVID secure way.
Thank you.
Councillor Nellams.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a question for Nicola. In the grant to support council costs in the table, there's a £50,000 grant for home-to-school transport planning. Is that in relation to perhaps off-island voting, or does it have a wider remit on St Mary's as well?
I'm going to pass that to Russell.
Well, do you want me to take it, Russell?
I was going to say I'm going to pass it to Ashton.
This is support, the planning and delivery of homeschool transport, because obviously we just need to make sure we've got a sustainable solution in terms of COVID secure boat transport. So there was a recognition by government that ours is a little bit more tricky. It's not just about buses and so on. So it relates to any child or family that's entitled to homeschool transport. And I won't bore you with all the rules right now. That's been very useful, and we have managed to fill that function, and we've got something that's looking quite good till half term at least. Then obviously there's the bigger issue about sustainability of inter-island services, and that's why we've got that letter into the government about transport as a whole.
Thank you.
Thank you. So could I please have a proposer for the recommendations in this report? Councillor Hackford, seconded Councillor Grottick. Are there any members against the recommendations in the report? Then they're all carried en bloc. Thank you very much. Thank you for the report. I would just like to add, before we move on to the planning items, the item of transport was mentioned earlier in the report, and I know whilst we're all concerned about the various businesses on Scilly and how they can get through next winter, we're also very concerned about our transport network and how our lifeline services can continue through the winter and until next spring. And to that end, I would just like to mention that we have been doing a lot of lobbying on this, and so has the Chief Executive, and we have had a letter back from the Secretary of State to say that basically the Department for Transport is absolutely committed to keeping our lifeline services open on Scilly, both to the islands and into Ireland, in order that we can get through this winter period. They are still in discussions with the Treasury, and we are not yet aware of how that commitment will take shape in terms of funding, but it is reassuring to know that they have stated their commitment and that our lobbying is working. So I just wanted you to be advised of that, and obviously when we have further information it will come forward. But it does mean that hopefully the services that can be provided by our transport operators during the winter will be enough to sustain our community in terms of, unless we get on-island testing, in terms of getting tests away and getting our medical appointments to the mainland and so on. So I don't want people to be overly worried about any reduced winter service at this stage, because we are hopeful that that support will be forthcoming. Thank you. So we move on to agenda item 9, refers to our planning application, which is in the hands of Lisa Wolf, our Senior Officer of Planning. Thank you.
Before Lisa starts, Chairman, can I just inform members that Councillor Lady Barclay has joined us, but that we still do not have Councillors Roger or Sims, because it is important to members of the public and to members as to who is participating in planning decisions.
Okay.
Stephen, I'm actually here. You've just not noticed me.
All right, thanks. So the three that we didn't have were Councillor Lady Barclay, Councillor Roger, and Councillor Sims that we didn't have at the beginning. So now it looks as though Councillors Lady Barclay and Councillor Sims have joined the meeting. Is that right? Yeah.
Well, yes, I'm here certainly.
Thank you. And Councillor Barclay. No. Is Councillor Barclay on the line? Well, perhaps not. No, she's left the meeting now, according to the machine. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So, item 9, Lisa, in your hands, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So this is an application brought to full council on the basis being called in for a decision by a councillor due to concerns over the potential impacts upon amenity. The proposal relates to an existing granite cottage, which is of a detached nature. It's located at Higher Town on St Martin's. The main and what appears to be the original cottage is a 2-storey structure. It has a later attached single-storey extension which will be retained and a collection of attached timber workshops and outbuildings which are proposed to be demolished. The curtilage of the dwelling is large and slopes down in a southerly direction, and the main outlook of the property faces south away from the road. The proposal includes the refurbishment of the property, including a new roof, new porch, new windows and doors, as well as the removal of all the deteriorating workshop structures and outbuildings. It's proposed to replace these with a simple and substantially smaller 2-storey side extension. The scale and design of the works have been assessed as appropriate for the existing dwelling without giving rise to harm. The size of the dwelling is considered to be appropriate and within the parameters of the nationally described space standards. The dwelling is currently unusually configured, suggesting there is already the potential for it to be used as 2 independent units of accommodation. The lawful use of the property is one single dwelling house, and the applicant is not seeking to split the property. Any subdivision of this property would require a further application, and officers are comfortable that as the layout of the property does not change and is intended to be used as a single unit of accommodation, the proposed refurbishment works and extension are acceptable. A formal split of the property would also suggest that one of the units would be around 17% below the minimum standards for a 1-bedroom unit of accommodation. That's not proposed. It is therefore recommended that a condition is imposed that clarifies that the property is one single unit of accommodation, that any use of it, any part of which is the potential to be independently used from the main dwelling is restricted, and would making it clear that would require a further application. So it's proposed there is a substantial improvement to the existing dwelling, the wider site and general improvements to the openness of this area. The proposal significantly reduces the footprint and volume of buildings at this site and delivers an improved traditional dwelling that aligns with the minimum space standards for size of the dwelling proposed. So subject to the conditions set out, the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, I can't see any, having read through the documentation, I can't see anything that would cause us to refuse this application. But happy to listen to Councillor Smith's comments as a councillor for St Martin's.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Marcus. I think in some ways the loss of the outbuildings on this property is something of a lost opportunity for other purposes, but that obviously is in the domain of the applicant. So having said that, the retention of this property will be for local needs housing, which is obviously is very welcome. Therefore, I'm happy to support this application as well as all the conditions attached. So I'll second Councillor Marcus's proposal.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any? No, then it's carried. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is item 10, The next planning application, again in your hands, Lisa, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 10 is Con Weathers. So this application is brought for council on the basis that it delivers 2 further self-catering units. The proposal relates to an existing granite outbuilding which contains a bedroom, kitchen, sauna, shower room and workshop area and store. The conversion as proposed will result in the guest house having 6 self-catering suites in addition to existing bed and breakfast offered within the guest house. The curtilage of the dwelling is large and the site is well screened from neighbouring properties and will not be visible in the public realm. As you'll note from the report, the proposal has been assessed as acceptable and subject to the conditions set out, it is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marcus.
Thanks. I noticed in this one there's quite a detailed response from the Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service. Who looks after that? Who signs that? It's a question for Lisa. Who signs those recommendations off?
Oh, who signs the Cornwall Fire and Rescue comments off?
Yeah,
basically. They come from Cornwall. I can't remember Graham Hughes, I think, is the gentleman who covers the islands. And I sent those comments through.
Just in terms of, because they're about access to the buildings for fire appliances, is there some way to ensure that those comments are adhered to?
So it would be a building control issue. So they would ensure that those distances and dimensions are adequate when they sign off the building control application.
Okay. In regards to that then, and it seems like a good plan to increase their capacity and to provide some high quality lets for the island. So recommendation.
Thank you. I think somebody else is wishing to come in, maybe on the telephone. Is there any other questions, please, from councillors? No. So could I have a seconder for that proposal, please?
I'm happy to second, Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. So we have a proposer and a seconder for Con Weathers' application. Any member against the application, please? No, then that's carried. Thank you very much. Item 11, another planning application, Trevine. Lisa, in your hands again, thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Chairman. So this is an application brought to full council on the basis that it's been called in due to concerns about the impact upon residential amenity. Just a slight correction in the report where it mentioned that the Agricultural Building Facility Project, which is a 1995 study, it did capture Trevine. The report says it does capture it, but actually doesn't change anything in terms of the recommendation. It's just listed in there as a deteriorating building. It's not listed. So the proposal relates to an existing detached greenhouse, store and garage building, which is located within the curtilage of this existing property. The proposal seeks to convert the outbuildings to form a studio and workshop associated with the property. This will be linked back to the dwelling with a glazed porch feature. Although the proposal will result in a larger property, this is achieved largely through reuse of existing buildings which are in a declining state of repair. And that was also noted in the Agricultural Building Facility Project. It was 25 years ago, it was in a declining state of repair. Permission has already been sought to improve the appearance and configuration of Trevine itself, the dwelling associated with this, which has seen a reduction in the number of bedrooms overall. It's noted that the curtilage of the dwelling is large and the site is well screened from neighbouring properties. Currently, the property would appear to be in need of improvements both to the existing dwelling and to the outbuildings, and there will be visible elements from the public realm. These have been assessed as acceptable in terms of the wider character of the area and the historic environment in this part of St Martin's and the wider natural environment. And based on the assessment and subject to the conditions set out, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marcus?
Yeah, the only concern I had was about the increase in flow of the property, but as Lisa mentioned, those are the increase is mainly due to the existing outbuildings being added to the internal side of the property. Is that right, Lisa?
That's correct. There is a small extension, former workshop on the side, but largely the structure's already there.
Okay. So again, I'll pass this over to Jonathan as well, just to advocate for some more and see if he has any comments.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Marcus. As this report notes, this application seeks to provide improvement to the existing house and outbuilding, which do require some modernisation improvement. This is to be welcomed, as is the addition of more solar PV panels. I do have concerns over the scale of the development, which is almost double the minimum space standards, will result in a very large habitable property and associated market value. However, condition C7 should mitigate this somewhat. I would note to members that I think policy LC9 we do need to look at quite seriously in terms of maximum sizes of properties, because it does have real impact on market values. However, with all that said, I would second Councillor Marcus's proposal to approve these plans.
Thank you. Any other comments from councillors, please, or questions? Okay, thank you. Well, we have...
Councillor Barclay has put her hand up, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Barclay. Are you on mute, Councillor Barclay? All right, Stephen, we've obviously got a problem with communicating with Councillor Barclay.
Perhaps if Andy can try to communicate with her and see what the situation is.
Okay. Can we proceed?
Yes.
Thank you. So we have a proposer for granting permission to this application at Trevene and a seconder. Is there any councillor opposed to the granting of this application, please? No, then it's carried. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is agenda item 12, planning application again for Menavor. I would like to point out to members, if they haven't noticed, that there was an amendment to the recommendations for this application, so when we come to the recommendations, you need to note that it's not the original recommendations, that this has now been amended. So, Lisa, over to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, that's just to reiterate that slight change to the amendment was to reflect the fact that Recommendation 1 was seeking delegation to determine the application to approve it, subject to South West Water having no objections to the proposal, and that if they do have an objection, that it will be brought back to members. I can report that South West Water, as of late yesterday, have commented on this application, and I will read that out now. So in relation to the connection to the drinking water network, South West Water is able to support an individual connection to the proposed new property. The applicant should liaise directly with South West Water regarding the detail of this connection. Capacity within the foul sewage system is currently restricted, and therefore individual connections will need to be considered on a case-by-case basis. Any connection to the sewerage system will therefore be subject to the arrangements of South West Water in respect of both the timing and the point of connection. In terms of surface water drainage, then that should not be connected to the foul drainage system, and therefore the applicant is expected to use the Sustainable Urban Drainage System design hierarchy to achieve a suitable disposable route for surface water. As part of South West Water's strategy to improve the drinking water and wastewater infrastructure on the islands, an investment programme has been developed which will be focused on achieving a reliable wastewater service, including being able to cope with extreme conditions, protecting the environment and providing long-term benefits to the community, with the company committed to support the necessary improvements in water and wastewater services to the islands so that the services are in line with the standards on mainland UK by 2025 or 2030 in the case of Tresco. This includes the ability to provide new water and sewage connections to the network, and therefore it is recommended that the applicant liaises directly with the company to discuss the potential of connections to public assets. I'm going to go on to my comments on this application. So members will recall the debate around the previous application back in May last year. This previous application was for a pair of two-storey semi-detached dwellings, which were specifically designed as holiday lets for groups or families with mobility impaired or disabled visitors. In considering the last scheme, members voted to refuse the scheme for 3 reasons pertaining to the impact on wildlife and biodiversity, the impact of the proposal in terms of overlooking, and in terms of the access issues for visitors. Following on from the refusal, the applicant submitted an appeal to the Planning Inspectorate against the Council's decision. One sec. The outcome of this appeal was sent through to the Council in July, where it was confirmed that the Inspector upheld the Council's refusal for 2 of the 3 reasons. The reason of access was dismissed. So this current application seeks to address the previous upheld refusal reasons through a revised application of a single story-and-a-half dwelling. Again, this is specifically aimed at disabled groups and families, and as you will note from the report, the principle of tourism accommodation is considered to be acceptable. Turning to the issue of biodiversity, then it is noted that the site is a private garden, not a council-maintained green space. The applicant has undertaken a Phase 1 habitat survey which confirmed the habitat value to be low due to the presence of introduced non-native species. There were no protected species found at the site. A number of recommendations were set out in the report which are designed to retain a level of biodiversity at the site, which includes removal of non-native species and measures to enhance biodiversity, such as protected species. Natural England have commented on the proposal and have not raised any objection to the proposal on the basis of the low biodiversity value of the site. Turn to the issue of overlooking, then it is noted that the first floor windows have been completely removed, with rooms within the roof space being served by high-level roof lights. It is not considered that these openings would give rise to any overlooking of neighbouring properties. With a reduction from 2 dwellings to a single dwelling, then it's considered that the movement of people to the site along the axis of Branksea Close will also be reduced, and overall it's not considered that the movements of a single household would significantly introduce a level of disturbance that would suggest the application should be refused. There are a number of conditions recommended in the report which seek to understand both the landscaping details as well as the construction management. The applicant has advised that the management of the construction of the dwelling will be set out in a construction management plan which will seek to avoid the access to Branksea Close to minimise the disturbance. Previously, the Council's infrastructure team have flagged up technical problems of the sewage system regularly blocking in the vicinity of the site, and on this basis a condition was previously recommended that would require the applicant to provide details of how foul drainage would be dealt with to ensure blockage problems would not be exacerbated. This remains a condition on the current proposal. Issues of water and wastewater were not previously identified as matters on which to refuse the last application, and in the absence of an objection from South West Water, it is not recommended that these matters would be a reasonable reasons on which to refuse permission for a single dwelling proposed. The applicant would need to ensure compliance with the building regulations and gain appropriate connection approval from South West Water. In terms of highway access, then it's noted that the dwelling is well located for shops and services, with visitors being able to bring vehicles visitors being unable to bring vehicles with them. There is no off-street parking proposed, but there is no requirement to provide this either in the adopted local plan or the emerging local plan. Vehicles connected with the use of the dwelling are likely to be taxi services. Overall, it is considered that the applicant has addressed the previously upheld reasons for refusal and has amended the scheme down to take account of the nature of the site, and subject to the conditions set out, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Councillor Marcus.
Thank you. Previously, there were 2 reasons, like Lisa outlined, 2 reasons for the failed appeal from the applicants.
overlooking the lack of the applicant taking into account the ecological impact of the proposal. The overlooking, like Lisa said, I think it seems to have, from the documents available, seems to have been mitigated by the introduction of skylights, which by their nature don't overlook, they look at the sky, not what's around them. The biodiversity, again, it's up to members to assess the ecological assessment commissioned by the applicants. The report does show the listed ecology present on the site. However, the representations from the neighbours, the numerous representations from neighbours, which I thank everyone for doing, and especially from 3 Rosine and 2 Branksea, evocatively describe the biodiversity present in the site and highlight the importance of the wildlife corridors. Shows us that nature, the natural environment, cannot exist in a bubble and cannot be isolated to a single plot of land. And we should be minded that we have to balance a single application against the wider impact on the islands. There are also other comments from the neighbours regarding noise, access and water usage and sewage. The most important for me, and seems the most important for the respondents, is about water. It's good that South West Water finally responded to their statutory obligation as a statutory respondee. It's also worth noting that they haven't responded to any other planning applications in this meeting. I would urge them that to be more active in the planning process on the islands. We're a very small community, and for them to become embedded in the community, they need to take part in all areas of their statutory obligations, like other agencies, like fire rescue, etc. Going on, I mean, the court, now they've responded, so it's a question for Lisa. It seems to me that they have there is no response. Basically, they're asking the applicant to speak to them on a case-by-case basis. What does that mean in terms of the project? Does that mean if the applicant wants to, if South West Water say they can't join the sewage network, the project can't go ahead?
Well, that's a difficult question for me to answer. I can only base my response on the fact that South West Water, yeah, like you say, it's not an objection. That's very clear. I think had they wanted to object, they would have been very clear on that point. They want to make sure that the mitigating measures or as many mitigating measures as possible are investigated by the applicant, so it can be clearly demonstrated to South West Water's satisfaction that there is a solution that can be found, and what they are saying is that has to be borne in mind. We're not going to object because there may be a solution, and we would want the applicant to work with us to find that solution. So, yeah, it's not a clear, strong opinion against it, but it is flagging up that there are known issues, there are known capacity issues.
Yeah, the surface water runoff is one of those. I mean, what I noticed from the plans is there's going to be a huge increase in surface water runoff just because we've gone from garden to roof space. So surface water is saying that cannot go into the foul water system. That has to be a sustainable drainage system, which is good. I don't particularly like the application. I think Kew Town's overcrowded with a legacy of plenty of other gardens being grabbed in the past. And I don't see this as it seems like an overcrowded development in an overcrowded area. However, I can't see me personally, I can't see any grounds for refusal. Other members will probably disagree with me. And with that, I'll leave the floor open for everyone else.
Thank you very much, Councillor Marcus. Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Marcus. To me, this application demonstrates significant sustainable design measures and wheelchair accessibility, both of which must be welcomed. Furthermore, the new design and orientation of the building addresses the overlooking issues of Branksea Close, as Councillor Marcus said. However, I believe there are still significant issues with regards to the loss of biodiversity and access. Whilst the planning inspector did not believe access to be an issue, I would disagree and suggest that further access for up to an additional 8 people is not sustainable in such a cramped area as Branksea Close. Despite the comments from South West Water, anecdotal evidence from residents in Rams Valley would not suggest that further addition to the sewerage network is sustainable. However, as Councillor Marcus said, it's somewhat difficult to make an assessment without a proper response from South West Water here. The PEA submitted by the applicants describes the relative merits of the biodiversity on site. What it doesn't address, however, is what this site brings to an area that has very little green space or mature trees in the immediate area. It brings significant biodiversity and well-being benefits to all the residents in the immediate vicinity. The loss of mature trees simply will not be adequately compensated for by new tree and or hedge planting. It's also ironic that a hedge is recommended to be planted, given that I understand a mature hedge was removed in recent years to make way for a wooden fence. I therefore propose refusal on the grounds of unacceptable loss of habitat and green space, and also inadequate access. There are 2 reasons there. Reason 1, biodiversity and habitat loss, and secondly, inadequate access. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Grosset, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree with Councillor Smith, and I would also say that especially in view of the fact that this is a unit designed for disabled persons, it is especially important that the access be clear and unencumbered. It is very, very challenging. There is no guarantee of an easy access for the paramedic service or even the fire service. The fire response is not exactly clear. Therefore, one would surely be looking for enhanced access requirements, whereas in fact the access is in the main, for the main part, pedestrian and challenging. So I am not comfortable that the access is appropriate for this development. I would also say that Lisa has just responded to the South West Water response with there may be a solution to the sewage requirements. Surely no councillor can really support a development going forward where there is no guarantee of appropriate sewage arrangements into our current sewage solution. I accept that in 2025 there may be a different outcome, but right now we're speaking of now, and it seems to me there is no guarantee from South West Water now that they will allow the property to join the sewage system. This seems to me very problematic. However, my main point is that the amenity value to the residents will be severely compromised. Garden grabbing is no longer allowed as a default acceptance presumption for development. We are now allowed to look at a development and see if it will contribute positively to both our very privileged conservation area and area of outstanding natural beauty. We are allowed to look if we can protect gardens from inappropriate development. I believe that the impact on the wider character and appearance of the area, especially given that the house itself, Menavor, has grown already from a family home to now supporting up to 12 holiday guests, I believe the impact on the neighbouring amenity, plus waste management, access and sewage issues, mean that we should refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mumford, please. You're on mute, Avril. You're on mute.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry about that. I fully support Councillor Smith and Councillor Grosset. You've just about said it all. And I do believe if objections and public feeling are to mean anything, then the sheer number of objections in this application should be taken into consideration. If they're not, then why do we allow people to object? Also, I'm worried about the privacy of the adjacent households in this. So I would fully support Councillor Smith, and I would second his proposal for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watt.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Several people have mentioned a number of objections. I did a count the other evening, and there were 28 references to environmental damage and garden grabbing, 22 for access, 18 on sewage and 14 on water, and so on and so forth. But I'd just like to remind members at this point, on the government website regarding garden grabbing, it says, and I quote it in full, the reclassification of gardens will not prevent making extensions to their homes. What it will do is give councils the power to reject planning applications for entirely new dwellings on garden land that are objected to by local people and ruin the character of the area. And I mean that says it all, really, as far as I'm concerned. And I would support Councillor Smith's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. So, are there any other comments or questions on this application, please? Councillor Mumford, you've still got your hand up. Is that... Okay. Thank you. So, we have a proposal from Councillor Smith to reject this application, which is seconded by...
Chairman,
Can Lisa Walton reply to the points that are made, please, Chairman?
Yes, sorry, Lisa.
That's all right. Just in relation to referencing the lost hedge, so that was, the applicant was requested by the council to maintain that hedge because it was restricting the access to Branksea Close. So the hedge and the trees of that boundary were taken out and replaced by a fence for the ease of getting vehicles and refuge collection vehicles to Branksea Close. That wasn't taken out for any other reason other than he was asked to maintain that boundary. In terms of impacts on, just to remind councillors that this is a private garden, and the garden grabbing is a point that is assessed in the report, and it means that decisions can't just be overturned for the basis of principle of previously developed land, so it was taken out of the definition of previously developed land. In terms of connections to the sewerage, then obviously we're bearing in mind that there have been reductions in the sewage network in the area in terms of particularly the museum flats, which no longer connect to the sewage connection. So there is capacity in the system, and what South West Water are requiring is, details for the applicant to investigate what solutions he can put in place to assure them that they're not going to exacerbate the capacity. So, I would come back to a point in the report, if you just bear with me. So paragraph 63, so it's important to note that where matters can be dealt with by way of pre-commencement conditions when taking account of paragraph 54 of the NPPF, which states that local planning authorities should consider whether otherwise unacceptable development could be made acceptable through the use of conditions or planning obligations. Any approval of the proposal would be conditional on the submission of appropriate details with respect to water consumption and details of sewage discharge minimisation. So that can be conditioned, and South West Water have welcomed that condition. They haven't objected to the proposal.
Okay, thank you very much.
And can I just make 2 points, Chairman? One in reply to Councillor Watts. Obviously, the point of the consultation is to ascertain any material planning considerations that haven't been taken into account. Just simply the volume of objections. If they are not material planning considerations, Lisa has said that the material planning issues raised in the previous review have been dealt with. The second issue is that if you are going to refuse, which obviously is your prerogative, you need to be clear about the reasons for refusal. Councillor Smith has put forward 2 reasons. Other reasons have been put forward. We just need to be clear how many should be added. And usually it is better to make sure that all the reasons are included. Otherwise, the council is at risk as to costs if unsustainable reasons are given.
Thank you very much. We go back to, Councillor Grottick.
Yes, I wonder if Councillor Smith and Councillor Mumford would like to add the pressure on sewage and water services to their existing proposal for refusal, please.
Yes, I'm happy to add that as a condition. Councillor Grottick said 3 reasons. Stephen, there is the unacceptable loss of habitat and green space. Secondly, inadequate access. And thirdly, the impacts of water and sewage in the immediate vicinity and on the sewage network.
Thank you. And could Lisa just simply comment on the sustainability of the sewage network as a planning reason for refusal?
Yeah, I mean, without South West Water objecting to the proposal, I do feel that it is a difficult reason to defend an appeal. So as a reason for refusal, I don't think it stands up as a material planning refusal.
So obviously, you have to take your officer's comments into account. It's up to you what weight you give it. But if you have 2 reasons for refusal that you think are potentially sustainable, i.e. loss of habitat and inadequate access, then the kitchen sink argument doesn't really work. You will either succeed on the habitat or access, or you won't.
Could I just make the point from the chair, Lisa? I think it was mentioned earlier that whilst South West Water have not objected, they have not found a solution with the applicant yet. That may or may not be forthcoming, and therefore I don't see how we can be asked as councillors to support this application if we have not got that information. I would imagine that that has to be ironed out before this application can be considered.
I think it's... I'm sorry.
Sorry. Do you want to comment, Lisa?
It was just to say, I think it's for the applicant's position, being faced with a potential refusal to go to the expense of finding that solution, that's not what he's prepared to do. He's prepared to actually consider it completely and fully and comply with what South West Water want. But to do that before he's got his permission, I think is prohibitively expensive if he's going to be faced with objections for other reasons as well, refusals for other reasons. So I think that's where we sat at that position.
Chairman, can I help? I think what Lisa's described there is what's called the Grampian condition. Basically, you can't do the development until you've solved the problem. And I think that's what's been described, and that's the condition that's proposed, is that you can't, unless you solve the drainage problem, you can't build anyway. It's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle again, isn't it? You've got to put those pieces into place before you can build. And it's important that no development takes place until that issue is resolved. And that's when you put a pre-commencement condition in as part of any plan application. So I think from the South West Water and the drainage point of view, that's what Lisa's describing.
Okay, thank you. Can we go back to Councillor Marcus, please, and then I'll take Councillor Grottick and Councillor Mumford.
Yeah, no, so I was just going to comment on the drainage stuff, but it seems to me that councillors are, determined to refuse the application on those original premises. So I'll shut up.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chairman. If the monitoring officer could please advise, it seems to me that several of us have mentioned the loss of amenity value to residents. It occurs to me that we should possibly replace the sewage issue on the reasons for objection with the loss of amenity value to residents, since it would appear that it is possible, not by any means guaranteed, that the sewage arrangements could be sorted prior to any commencement. It seems to me that we now have a stronger issue in the loss of the amenity value to residents.
Stephen?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. There isn't a lot that I can add to what Lisa has said, really. And Lisa has said that the amenity arguments have been addressed in the planning application, and therefore it's not obvious what sustainable planning objections there are in view of the changes that have been made to the application since the reasons for the refusal of the previous application were upheld on appeal. I don't know if Lisa wants to add anything, but it just seems to me that you concentrate on your strong reasons.
Chairman, it's Nicola again, and having gone through the appeals process many times in the past as previous head of planning, I think one of the things you need to focus on is your evidence base for this. So sit yourself in front of an inspector and a barrister and think about what you're going to say to explain your reason for refusal. I think the loss of amenity space is a difficult one. I think what you're describing is the character of the area. And then the question is this out of keeping with the character of the area that you've got? So if you look around that location, is it totally out of keeping with the character of that area? And that would be what you'd try to defend it upon. It's quite a subjective thing. So I think if you go down the biodiversity route, you've got no objection from Natural England. So I think carefully about your reason for refusal and how, if you're sitting in that hot chair, what evidence you're going to call upon to defend your position and protect the council from costs at appeal.
So thank you for that, Nicola. Councillor Mumford.
Yes, I would like to ask Councillor Watts, please, to read out again what he said, because surely that can be a reason for refusal. What you found on the website, Councillor Watts. Can that maybe put into it?
Well, it is basically it's a paragraph regarding garden grabbing, and it's on the government website. I mean, it's easy to look up if you just Google garden grabbing, and up it comes. And it says, I'll quote it again, the reclassification of gardens will not prevent making extensions to their homes. What it will do is give councils the power to reject planning applications for entirely new dwellings on garden land that are objected to by local people and ruin the character of the area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Watt.
I would like to see that put in as one of the reasons for refusal.
Okay, Councillor Smith, are you happy with that being added as a reason?
I am, Chairman, yes. So just for clarification, I think the three reasons are biodiversity and habitat loss, inadequate access, and a third reason for garden grabbing. Just to clarify with Councillor Grothick, would you agree with dropping the refusal for the impact on sewage and water?
Yes, indeed, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, we've had a lot of debate on this application.
Robert, could I come in a minute?
Who's that? Steve Sims?
Yeah.
Yes, please do.
A question for Lisa, firstly. If the applicant wanted to, he could concrete over the entire garden without any recourse to us, couldn't he?
He could technically take out all of his planting, all of his grass, all of his plants. He would need to notify us if he wanted to fell trees or prune trees in the sense of trees, not hedges. You could clear most of that garden without any consent from the council, yes.
So that could be done, and then another application come in and the biodiversity thing is gone. But it just seems to me that we are, in a way, looking for reasons to reject this application. And it does strike me that the previous reasons why it was rejected and upheld on appeal are gone. I'm just fairly certain this applicant will
appeal a decision if we reject it, and we're quite likely to lose it on appeal. I'm not particularly keen on this actual application, but I just feel that we may well be straying into erroneous reasons to reject, because we do seem to be looking for reasons to reject it, as opposed to perhaps properly valid reasons.
Okay. Lisa, do you want to comment?
Well, not members are entitled to rebalance the issues that I've considered in the report, and obviously come to a conclusion where they feel more weight should be given to these issues. I think Councillor Sims is correct. The applicant has lost an appeal, and the council's previous refusal was upheld. Two of the reasons, that being biodiversity and habitat loss, the impact of that, and the impact of overlooking. They were the two reasons that were upheld that the applicant has addressed. It is, in my view, risky to refuse to continually find new reasons on which to refuse the application. The issue of biodiversity, I cannot recommend that as a reason for refusal based on what I've seen in the application. And access was not upheld as a reason for refusal previously. I do take members' rebalanced views into account, and that could be a reason for refusal. But Steve's right, it wasn't upheld previously. The scheme has been reduced from 2 dwellings to a single dwelling. The council maintained that access to Branksea Close, and one additional dwelling is not significant in my view. The amenity value of a private garden is limited. It's not public realm. It's not publicly maintained garden. Again, he's right. They could get rid of most of that without any comeback. That could mostly be lost. It is risky to refuse this application for the reasons you've set out, and that's my view as well.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We've had an
Chairman.
Sorry, who's this, please?
May I speak, Chairman? Councillor Davis.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Councillor Davis.
Having listened to all the arguments, thank you, Chairman. Having listened to all the arguments today, I find this a very difficult decision, perhaps one of the more difficult that I've come across since being a councillor. My heart is entirely with all those who are against this planning application, but my head, I'm afraid, is for it. I see, having listened to the arguments, I think we'd be very unwise to refuse this planning, and I feel that that's the decision I will have to come to. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor,
Councillor Legg, I've just raised my hand.
Thank you, Harry. Yeah.
I would agree with Councillor Davis. Yes, there doesn't seem to be material planning grounds that haven't been mitigated against to refuse. I think Councillor Sims's comment about concreting over the garden is irrelevant, because if someone did that, it would be relatively easy to remove the concrete and replace a garden. However, if there is an entirely new dwelling built there, that is a significant undertaking to remove it, to bring back a garden, should there be a new owner in the property. So removing a garden by concreting over it is very different to removing it by building over it. I don't feel that I don't feel that I could support refusal.
Okay, thank you. Right, we've had a lot of discussion on this application. It's decision time now, members. You have had a proposal that this application is refused. Councillor Smith, and seconded by Councillor Mumford.
Would it be better, Chairman, to have a roll call on this one, because obviously it would be clearer.
So the proposal is that this application is refused. So Councillor Mumford, you're obviously in favour of it being refused. Yes?
I am.
Thank you. And Councillor Smith, similarly?
Yes, refusal.
Councillor Grottick, refusal?
Refusal, please, Chair.
Councillor Guy? Councillor Guy? I think he must have left the meeting. Councillor David?
I support the application, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Dean? Councillor Dean?
Oh, Mr. Councillor Dean declared into the chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nellams?
With the part, I support the application.
Sorry, you support the...
With a heavy heart, he supports the application.
Okay. Councillor Watt?
Refusal, Chairman.
Councillor Williams?
Refusal, Chairman.
Councillor Dorian Smith?
He's left the meeting, Chairman. I saw him earlier.
Thank you. Councillor Legg?
Well, the proposal, I don't agree with the proposal, so I support the application. But I'm not proposing the application.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Marcus?
I support the application with a heavy heart.
Councillor Barclay? Councillor Barclay?
Chairman, Councillor Barclay has indicated that she's listening, but she can't take part.
And she can't say whether she is...
That's correct, she can't say.
Right. I take it Councillor Rogers is still not with us. Okay. Councillor Sims?
Again, with a heavy heart, I support the application.
Okay.
At the moment, Chairman, it is 5 for refusal, 5 for grant. It is your vote.
Yeah. Difficult one. Also with a heavy heart. And I think in view of the planning situation, I'm going to have to vote for the proposal.
Chairman, Chairman, as a point of order, there has only been one proposal so far, which was for refusal, so there hasn't been a proposal to support the application, to my knowledge.
Yeah, no, so that means that it's failed because it's 5 to support the application, 6 against.
My proposal has failed, but there hasn't been a proposal to support. Is it correct?
No, that's quite right, Chairman. The proposal in front of you was that the planning application be refused. That has been lost by 6 votes to 5. So therefore now, in order to authorise the grant planning application, there will need to be a vote to that effect.
Okay, Councillor Marcus, I will propose the application.
Okay, do I have a seconder, please, for the granting of the application?
I'll second it, Chairman. Councillor Nellams.
Thank you. So we have a proposal for acceptance of the application from Councillor Marcus, seconded by Councillor Nellams. Would all those against that recommendation mention, please? Councillor Grottick?
I am against supporting the application, Chairman.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Mumford? Yes.
Against?
Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor, where are we?
It was Williams and Watts who refused previously.
Councillor Williams.
Still against.
Yeah. Councillor Watt.
Against, Chairman.
Thank you. So that's the 6-5 in favour of the application. And I would state from the chair, and I know through discussions with other councillors, that it is with a heavy heart because there are a whole number of reasons why this application should possibly be refused. However, the council has a responsibility to do the right thing by planning and the regulations under which we operate, and therefore it would be irresponsible of us to be making ourselves in a situation where it could cost the council a lot of money. Councillor Grottick, you wish to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry to prolong the discussion, but I'd like to add a condition that this unit, which sadly will now be built, subject to an appropriate sewage arrangement being made in advance of the building, cannot be sold off as a separate unit of accommodation, but be linked to Men of War for the duration, well, in perpetuity.
Is there a seconder for that amendment, please?
I'm happy to second it, Robert.
Councillor Mumford.
Perhaps if, before they come to a vote, perhaps Lisa could comment on the justifiability of linking these two buildings.
Yes, thank you. Lisa?
So it's a consideration of whether or not such a condition would meet the test, whether it should be refused without that tie to Men of War. It's obviously not something that I have recommended in the report. I haven't recommended that it would only be acceptable if it's linked to Men of War. Men of War is an open market dwelling that the applicant currently owns and operates as a holiday let. He's not making a case on the basis of this will be part of his Men of War offer. This is made on the basis of he's delivering a holiday let specifically aimed at disability groups or disability families. He's not made an application based on it. The fact.
2023. Just quickly on the numbers themselves, not want to spend too much time on it. The outturn report came to you in June. This report is actually turning last year's financial performance into the statutory accounts, which have to be produced in compliance with the CIPFA code and the International Financial Reporting Standards. All that creates a very lengthy document there. It's about 80 pages, and it's fairly complex in its nature. Hopefully members may have read it in part or in full. What I will say is the pages that they perhaps should concentrate on are the first 15 or so pages, from pages 5 to 15, or in the pack, that is the pages 217 to 227, which basically sets out in simple terms the financial performance for the council, its financial plans going forward, and it's clearly quite understandable to the layman. What I will say is that the main statements are set out. They're a bit more complicated. They're set out on pages 16 to 20. But the two key messages I think I'll just concentrate on, and they are just a repeat of the outturn report, is we had an outturn with a small unspend of £7,000. We reported that in June, and that was despite some significant challenges, in particular with the water services. The other point to mention is that we have a general fund reserve of now 1.829 million. That's down about 140,000 during the year because we have drawn on it. But importantly, we have not drawn on it to support general expenditure. In previous years, we've had to use reserves just to balance our normal expenditure. We've drawn on it this year for two exceptional unplanned items, which is exactly what we hold a reserve for. And both those items are clearly set out there. The bigger ones, which is obviously the additional legal and advice we've needed around the museum building, and we had a backdated business rates bill going back many years that we had to pay for the waste site. So again, they're both exceptional items, which is the reason that we do hold reserves. So I think the strong message is we're living within our means. We have a very, very strong reserve position, and we're in a good position going forward to meet the challenges that we have. I think I'll just leave it there, Chair. Paul has already handled the position from our external auditors. They're independent. I think he gave a fairly good assurance that they're happy with our statement of accounts, that they're a fair reflection of our financial position, and he did cover the value for money, which is slightly disappointing, but some of it was slightly out of our control. And we'll just touch that the existing internal audit contract that we had with a external provider, 1 week we signed an extension, agreed a fee, agreed the work plan, and 7 days later they handed the contract back, and that was no notice at all. They then gave us 2 months to enter into discussions with them about novating that contract to an alternative provider. During that time, we felt that that wasn't an appropriate solution. We then went in and appointed an alternative, but obviously that all led to a 3 or 4 month gap with no internal audits, which from our external auditor's point of view means they have to give us that except for on the value for money report. Disappointing, because I think we'd addressed all the issues that have been raised last year, and I was hopeful that we would have a completely clean opinion on everything, but just gives us another challenge for next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Russell. Do I have any members, please? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Just like to congratulate the finance team on a good report here. There's a lot of good points in it, and particularly pleased to see the reserve levels at a healthy place. And clearly, as Russell says, in the current financial climate, I think our finances being in this position is something to be really welcomed. Just a couple of observations. One, the amount we spent on the interim chief executive. I'm sure members of the public would be somewhat shocked about that. Pleased that we're moving on to a more permanent solution. Just wanted to also highlight that the airport, clearly we understand, is in a difficult situation financially, and we all need to address that. Something I'm personally very concerned about. And just one question for Russell. There's indication there's a significant increase in pension costs. Could you just deal with that one, please?
Yes, dealing with the pension cost issue. In actual fact, the real pension costs, and I'll get to that in a minute, there has been, through the 2019 triennial evaluation, there's been no increase. The reason there's an increase in the figures here is this is the accounting reflection of what the liability is. It is quite an artificial position, but it is the one that we have to show as per the regulations. And it's pretty much a fairly draconian position. As if everything stopped today, what is our liability? With the ability not to get any more earnings, investment earnings, etc. So the main reason for the increase is because of the way that is valued as at the 31st of March. It uses risk-free investment rates, which are all based around gilts, and if anyone follows the markets, they'll know that in those first few weeks of COVID, the gilt markets had significant volatility, which created this calculation. So it's really a calculation which is for accounting purposes only. The fund itself is still strong, and we have no further liability than we had at this time last year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, please? No, well, I would just like to make a comment from the chair and thank Russell very much indeed, and his team, for all the hard work that they have done on this. It's always very much appreciated. We know we are in a very safe pair of hands with you, Russell, and I'm quite confident that the few remarks that were made by Grant Thornton about the internal audit are being addressed and will be fully addressed, and they do not give me cause for concern. So I just want to thank you very much indeed on behalf of the Council. Thank you. So we have 4 recommendations from this report. Could I have a proposer, please, for the adoption of these recommendations? Councillor Grotett, seconded by Councillor Legg. Are there any councillors against the adoption of these recommendations, please? No, then they're adopted. Thank you very much indeed. Right, we move on now to agenda item 13, which is back to you, Lisa, please, in planning to do with the BT consultation, intended removal of phone boxes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I think it was back in May, BT consulted us on the removal of 3 phone boxes, and then came back with the 4th one. So they are carrying out they have carried out a public consultation to remove the phone boxes, as they are required to do under Ofcom rules, where this results in only 1 phone box remaining. I think it's a 400-kilometre radius. So they are notifying the local authority. This is their intention. We have, I think it's 72 days to let them know whether or not we would have any objections to the proposal. So we've considered the issues associated with phone box removal, and have concluded that there is actually some positive outcomes to removal of the 1980s style phone boxes. 1 will remain in Hugh Town on St Mary's, and the recommendation is that we raise no objections to phone box removal in this case.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Grotett.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I know we've tried to ask them to replace the box with a more sympathetic heritage box. I understand it will be expensive. However, I would like to, if members approve, would like to add a second recommendation that the Council, at an appropriate time, continue to explore the possibility of a more sympathetic heritage phone box in the remaining location. I don't want to pin anybody down, but I wouldn't like to think we'd exhausted the possibility.
Thank you, Councillor Grotett. Councillor Legg.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit disappointed that BT have recognised that the phone is used during the summer months when there is more tourists here, and have then used 3 months during which tourism was closed for their monitoring period for the statistics. Having said that, I have no issues with moving to just one phone box. So I don't intend proposing anything different other than the recommendation. But yes, I just would like to note my disappointment that they would use data from a period which is completely irrelevant. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Legg. I don't see anybody else wishing to come in on this. Is there a seconder, please, for Councillor Grottett's added recommendation that the Council continue to explore a more sympathetic heritage box in the future?
I'll second that.
Councillor Legg, thank you. So we have two recommendations. That is that we don't raise any objections to their removal, but we will continue to explore a more sympathetic heritage box in the future. Are there any councillors against those two recommendations, please? No, then they're carried. Thank you very much. We move on next to item 15 on our agenda, which is the housing delivery update number 5, which is in the hands of Senior Manager Nicola Stinson. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm delighted to bring you a further report on our housing delivery. It was December last year that we last brought a paper to you. There's also been a number of months where we've had to stall work on the programme because of COVID, but as we come out of that period, we're looking now to progress the applications on one of the sites in particular, which is the Enna Farm site. So I'm seeking your approval to submit a plan application on the Enna Farm site, which is housing site H3 of the local plan. We're going to do some further consultation on that site, virtual consultation, so we'll see how that goes before we submit the plan application. But you'll see from the report that all the reports are just about completed now. So despite the COVID period, we've managed to still progress the application towards a planning stage. We've had some ongoing funding discussions with Homes England and others. So hopefully there may be some further funding to help us implement that permission and to acquire the site. We will maintain that dialogue with Homes England and others. On the other sites within the programme, Con Thomas, we're also speaking to a delivery partner and continue a dialogue with other funders as well. And you'll notice today there's some announcements around additional funding for affordable housing. So we'll be exploring other funding opportunities to bring that site forward as well. To do so, I really need to continue having some support from somebody. One of our housing assistants, Sean Scott, has been working really hard with me on this project, but also has been distracted and worked full-time on the COVID preparations. So I'm wanting to extend her contract now through to March 2022, which I think will see us well prepared for delivery and indeed into the delivery phase at that stage. So because we've been able to acquire grant funding from Homes England and from the Community Housing Fund, we've not had to draw upon the housing reserve. And so we still have money within that pot originally allocated in November 2018 to support the resource to help us drive this project forward. So I've included some of the elevations and layouts for the Enna Farm site as an appendices just for information at this stage, but the recommendations are set out in 4, and that relates to submitting the plan application, amending the plans as required following that consultation with the community, and to seek additional funding, as well as extending the contract of that housing officer to help us pursue this project into the future. So I'm very pleased to put those recommendations to Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Councillor Legg.
Thank you, Chair. It just occurred to me that I should declare an interest as the named assistant is a friend of mine, close friend of my wife. So I shall remove myself from the meeting, and if Andy Thomas could contact me to let me know when this item's finished.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Legg. Councillor Grottick, please.
Thank you, Chair. We seem to have been talking about housing since I became a councillor in 2013. Now, I'm really pleased with this report. It's very exciting. There's very real progress, and I'd like to commend the team. However, can I just ask quickly two things? That in recommendation 2, that this will not entail any reduction in units. I think in the past we've actually allowed folk with the best will in the world to possibly build houses that were really large, and I think what we now need is more affordable units that will hopefully be, that the applicants will enjoy living in for years to come without severe financial pressure. Secondly, I would ask, can we have, and are we having, discussions around the tenure so that these self-build units will remain to support the community in housing need even after the original applicants might move on either to the mainland or to another house? Thank you. Perhaps you could answer that for me, Nicola.
Yes, certainly in terms of tenure, that will be resolved through the planning process, but you'll remember in your local plan, all these properties will have to be principal residences. So it will be a principal residence condition we'd be expecting to see imposed on through that planning stage, but I don't want to tread on your toes when you wear your planning hat. In terms of the number and layout, we'd like to see more on the site if possible, but if we consider this is going to be a self and custom build site, it's more likely that we'll get detached. So what we've done here is we've mixed 4 semi-detached with 9 detached properties. I don't think the numbers will go down. We may come back later to increase the density if the tenure changes, but at the moment we're assuming this is a self-build site at Enna Farm. If that changes and we want to go to affordable rent, because when we go back to the housing group, they don't want to pursue it any further, then we will possibly look at increasing the number of semi-detached and terrace properties. But at this stage, until we get that further feedback, we're settling on 13.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, second Councillor Grottick's comments. Very welcome to see this. Couple of specific questions. Firstly, around the pattern book designs, how are each of those options chosen for planning applications? Yeah, I mean, there's 5 options, so how do you choose which ones go forward?
So that's part of the consultation. So on the Enna Farm site, this is where we will be looking to allocate a property to a person, okay? So they will start to say, this is the one, this is the plot I will want. So we're trying to tailor it so we're actually getting to the reality of who's going to build what. So it will come from that next stage. So it's really starting to get people to put their hands in the pocket as well and be part of this housing group for delivery. So once we get to that stage, we will then know where we go from here. So at this stage, this is as good as we've got. We've got further work to do as we go through the planning process, and we all know things change, people's circumstances change. As we go from planning through to implementation, to starting build and to completion, things will change. But I think what we've got is a starting point for success.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question is just on Carn Thomas. Clearly, it's a highly valued site by the community. So, firstly, where are we on timescales? I understand it's behind Old Town site, and also what the southern part of the site, which is up on the hill there, which you've identified is not suitable for development, which I agree with. But what are the plans for that part of the site?
So on the Carn Thomas site, there's 2 elements to it. Where are we? So we're in a difficult place in that we haven't got a delivery partner, and we haven't got enough funding in the budget to take that forward ourselves at this time. That's not to say we won't look to continued funding. So in terms of where we are behind the Enna Farm site, but we will continue to get funding, and we have got continued discussions with a potential developer, partner developer, registered provider on that site, and those discussions continue this month. In terms of what happens to the rest of the site, well, you'll remember we did a public consultation on this proposal, and there were a number of suggestions around community gardens, around opportunities for solar panels on the land to the south of the site. So think about housing development along the road frontage, and then what happens to the rest becomes part of the next discussion. So once we go to consultation on that site, we'll be saying, well, how do we make that happen? If that's going to be a community garden, how does it happen? If it's going to be a solar garden, how's it going to happen? Is that a community venture? Is that a CIC? So who is it who's going to make that happen? So going from theory to delivery with a partner, whether it's for the housing development on the front or for the land behind, that's the next step.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Dean, please. You're muted, Tim, I think. Tim, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, Robert. I'd just like to thank Nicola and Sean for all their hard work, and thanks for the report, and just emphasise really how important these projects are, particularly the self-build, which is very much achievable. We all know the problems with housing on the island for residents, and there's a massive shortfall. And the self-build is a real good way to start addressing those problems. So I think the more we can do to support this project, the better, and not put barriers in the way, just kind of back it as much as we can. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Dean. I'm sorry I didn't take your hand first, but I didn't see you on my screen. I'm sorry. So are there any other councillors wishing to come in on this, please?
Yes, Steve Sims, I just wanted to reiterate everybody else's comments about and thank Nicola and the team for moving this forward, because there's been no real housing built by the council, I think none at all really, since I became a councillor in 2013. So, yeah, well done, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sims. And I would also like to reiterate that from the Chair, Nicola. I know only too well how much work you and your team are doing and have been doing, even, trying to deal with COVID as well. So do appreciate all the work that you've done on this, and look forward to very much to the progress now in the future. Can I take it, please, that I have a proposal from Councillor Grottick to approve these recommendations, and I think that was seconded by Councillor Smith. Is that correct, please? Yeah.
I didn't, but I'm happy to.
I'm sorry, I thought you said you were seconding. Sorry. Okay, so are there any councillors against the adoption of these 4 recommendations, please? No, so they're carried. Thank you very much indeed, Nicola and team. So we move on now to item 16 on our agenda, which is the risk and Q1 non-financial performance report, which is in the hands of Officer Bob Dawson.
Thank you, Chairman. I will take the report as read, and conscious of time, but would like to just make a few comments before opening to members for debate. Any questions, of course, as usual, on specific risks and performance measures should be directed to the relevant risk owner or representative here today. It's very gratifying, of course, to hear that the external auditor is satisfied with the current position, with where we were in terms of value for money, and as Councillor Grottick has said, it's understood that our risk management is a work in progress, but I'd add that's probably come on enormously since the spring of last year. And with the commitment of the operational leadership team and the fit within the wider democratic and corporate service plan, it could be real confidence that our positive trajectory will continue, and the phased approach we've adopted will continue to evolve and improve with the benefit of member feedback. In terms of the report, members will note that the number of corporate risks has changed substantially, and that's followed 2 in-depth review sessions with the operational leadership team, and the merging of related risks I see as evidence of improvement of the process, reducing potential for confusion and focusing attention on those current controls and further actions that can genuinely impact on residual risk scoring. Also, no corporate risk escalated following the response and initial recovery phase from COVID-19, with the direction of travel for a number of risks being, in fact, de-escalation based on the residual risk score. Regarding the value for money opinion and the factors impacting on internal control, as raised by the Grant Thornton report, including the gap in internal audit provider and subsequent impact of COVID-19 on internal audit effectiveness. This is reflected in risk 11 in Appendix A, the table there, and the I suspect the controls and further actions may benefit yet from further review to facilitate us getting to that target risk. In terms of performance management, the main difference in reporting this quarter, as requested by members, is to include commentary on trends, together with reference to identified targets, and one performance measure is added, and that's in relation to reports per decision. I would add that although my co-author Tom is the owner for this measure, the responsibility, of course, for prompt submission in line with the report handbook and sign-off process is with those report authors, myself included. In addition, waste and recycling figures for last year are included. This was hampered in the quarter four report for last year by the COVID-19 response, where the senior officer responsible is also the council's emergency planner. And there was a total commitment to making sure members and the public received the correct data. So with that, Chairman, I'll close my introduction, open the member debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. So are there any questions, please, or comments on this report? Councillor Marcus?
The only thing I noticed was, the only thing that's really stuck out was the housing voids. I spoke to the housing officer, rang me up and gave me the background to that really high figure. If we were a private housing rental operation, then a 3-month turnaround wouldn't be an acceptable figure at all. There is background to that figure. But yeah, I look forward to that going down in the future, basically. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to Bob for the report. It's good to see that the number of reds are reducing, but clearly we still need to be concerned about the reds remaining. Just a specific question on climate emergency. Can you advise on a timescale to score the risks on climate emergency, please? Because it's important for us to understand the resource requirement for this area of work for the council, so therefore understanding the risk is, part of that. Thank you.
Bob? Thank you, Councillor Smith. I think this is one that had some recent review from Paul Masters and Nicola, so I don't know if Nicola will be able to comment on any further. At the moment it's held under review for OLT, but I think it will be, depending on what further actions and maybe the revised climate strategy coming forward would impact that.
Thanks, Chairman. It's Nicola. Yeah, I think we'll get that scored once we sort the structure and resources out. That'll become a live activity. So I think the reason it's not scored at the moment is it's sort of held in abeyance at officer level. You'll see an escalation of activity over the coming few weeks. So bear with us, Jonathan. It'll be scored and we'll keep it green.
Thank you. I'll keep you on your toes.
Thank you. So we have 2 recommendations for this report. Could I have a proposer, please?
I propose.
Councillor Mumford and seconder, Councillor Williams. Thank you. Are there any councillors against the adoption of these 2 recommendations, please, on risk? No, then they're carried. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for the report, Bob.
Thank you, Chairman.
We move on now to item 17 on the agenda, which are the departmental service plans for the financial year 2021. We are going to take these reports as read because they're very detailed and you've had copies of them. But our officer Gemma Pender is going to present them to you, and we will take any important questions if necessary. Thank you. Thank you, Gemma.
Thank you, Chairman. This report recommends that members approve the full suite of departmental service plans for the financial year 2020-21. These plans are prepared by senior officers and senior managers and are included as appendices. Originally, we had planned to get these reports to full council at the beginning of this financial year, but the onset of the coronavirus pandemic generated substantial new work streams and significant changes to senior managers and officers across the authority. So the decision was taken to delay this report until September. Next year's service plans will be presented to full council in May 2021, in line with the original schedule. We would welcome your comments, particularly in relation to how the service plans tie in with your corporate plan objectives. Obviously, there are a number of plans in place with objectives spanning all of the authority services, and some of the commitments are necessarily fluid. So please continue to raise more detailed queries in the course of your regular conversations with the relevant managers. You can also raise any concerns about the relationship with departmental service plans and the corporate plan with myself and Tom ahead of the review of the corporate plan in January 2021. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gemma, and thank you for the detailed reports. Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, the service plans show the breadth of the ambition of council and give some detailed support background to the corporate plan. It's really good. It's really accessible, readable. A couple of minor issues. Some of the entries have quite a lot of capitals and acronyms. It can be feels a bit shouty at times. And also the barrier section feels a bit arbitrary. COVID is only mentioned in some places, not others. Some barriers are more detailed than others. It'd be good to have a bit more consistency or some assumptions at the start of the document just to make sure that that's a consistent theme all the way through. But apart from that, I would propose recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Sounding slightly like a broken record, but I'll just flag up the climate emergency issue. It's been dealt with under some sections. But the changes in behaviours and working practice need to be embedded through the organisation and all its operations. I've had a bit of discussion with Tom Walton and with Nicholas Stinson on this. I understand there will be actions, but I'm really just sort of flagging up that I think this needs to be fully embedded in this process by this time next year. We need to improve our working practice through the year, and I'll be proposing some changes to the corporate plan to reflect this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams. You're on mute, Joel.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, sorry about that. No, I'm really pleased that the link between the corporate plan, the service plans and the PDP is starting to really be evident. I think the approach is good and effective. There are a few things I sort of did pick up on. There are a couple of reviews in there, notably leisure and maintenance and repair. I'm slightly concerned it's all a bit internal. I'd like a bit more objective and subjective input into that. If possible, the LGA might be an avenue for us to explore. Otherwise, I just feel it's going to be a little bit insular. I like the comments about external communication, but I'd like us to be perhaps a little bit bolder and more confident with that. Pre-COVID, I would say we were a bit reluctant to engage in community consultation and to share some of the good news stories. So I'd like this to be an opportunity to think about that. I think the question is posed, what do we want to be famous for? And if we can't get community engagement right over here, then I think it's not a great position. And on that line as well, cultural heritage, there's lots of talk about engaging with stakeholders, but again, not much talk about engaging with the community. So I think that's an opportunity that I wouldn't like to miss. But my main question was, how do we as members, are we expected to performance manage this? I don't want it to go from 1 year to the next and we get an update. Is there a suggestion that we get interim arrangements on what's going on, RAG rated, that sort of thing?
Thank you. Nicola?
Sorry, I think in terms of the important issues in the corporate plan, I think the updates that we've used as examples, say for housing around the delivery, have been useful. I think in terms of the barriers, the risk register also, there's an overlap here. So you've got some of the challenges that we've identified in the risk register are actually featured as actions in here. So I think there's a number of ways to report back to council through the risk register and through performance management. There's update reports on major projects and major schemes. And then I think there's the role that we touched on earlier about the informal workshops. I think we need to pick up on what's important to members, how you're going to, what do you want us to present to your informal workshops so you can get updates on major projects or major issues, so that we can put action plans in place if you think there's any slippage. So I think there's a whole array of different mechanisms there. Probably links in with the communication strategy as well, I think, around how we communicate with you, how we communicate with our staff, and how we communicate with our community. We need to mix all that up. So I think that's the next stage, really. I think we've got the ingredients together now, haven't we? We've spent the last year getting all the ingredients together. Now we need to find the best way to pull that all together and make a success of this process. But I think we've started well. I think the next step is mixing it up well and making sure that everyone's informed and you've got a good handle on where we are with all the things that are of the most importance. I would make the point as well is that the department plans you've just looked at here just take us through to March, and I have said to our officers, be realistic. We've almost, we've slowed productivity down over the last 6 months because of COVID. So we've been realistic about the next 6 months. If you want to challenge us beyond that to make us more ambitious, I think that needs to be through the corporate plan process, and I think that would be really valuable. So think about how we monitor that through a whole range of different things, not just one thing.
Thank you, Nicola. Aisling, could I ask you to come on to this question as well, please?
And everything Nicola said is right. I think there's also what we need to have a discussion about, I think at informal, is about how we use scrutiny. So do scrutiny take a service plan at each of their meetings? They can do the deep dive, get in all the relevant officers, and they can make a recommendation to council about whether or not progress is being made against those service plans, rather than go through them at every single full council. So let's have that discussion about how we monitor them, but they all feed into the non-financial performance monitoring stuff that we really want to improve, and Bob's already shows that we've made a huge and significant impact on.
Thank you. Bob, would you like to come in, please?
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, not a great deal to add to what the senior managers have said there. That Paul Martyrs, we've been having discussions anyway about how to develop the performance framework, so I think that will go a long way to addressing the question that Councillor Williams brought up about how we performance manage against the corporate plan, the service plans, things like that. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Any other councillors wish to come in, please? No. So we have a recommendation that we endorse the departmental service plans. Could I have a proposer for their endorsement? Was it Dan Marcus? Did you propose that, or was I dreaming it? Thank you. And seconded by Tim Dean. Is that right? Thank you. Any councillors against the adoption of these service plans? No, then they are adopted. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for all the work that's gone, the detailed work that's gone into them, Gemma, and everybody else, Bob, involved. Thank you. Right, we come on to agenda item 18 now, which is a notice from NHS providers of strategic intention to formally integrate, which is in the hands of Aisling, please.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I'm going to try and do this so you can finish it at midday. So this is a really good idea. It's been on the table for a long time. I'm representing this paper on behalf of colleagues at RCHT and CPST. I'm part of the system leadership board with them, as is Paul Masters. It makes financial sense, but most importantly, it makes a lot of sense for patient outcomes. It goes a long way to addressing the fragmentation of the NHS. It makes huge sense locally if you think about making sure that community health services link up with acute appointments and midwifery, and it will make sense across the system. This is just the beginning. It's just for you to support the direction of travel. There will be a huge amount of due diligence involving all of you, both in scrutiny for Council at Health and Wellbeing Board, as well as all the financial work that will be undertaken by GHSB. So it's just to say, do we think it's a good idea? And if you do, can you write a letter of support to say so? There'll be a long process ahead, 2 years, so do not feel that this is all you have to contribute. It's just to say that let's start off positively. As you know, integration is the name of the game, and COVID has more than proven that.
Okay, thank you very much, Aisling. Any members wishing to come in on this, please? Councillor Grottick. You're muted, Councillor Grottick.
Sorry, Chair. Please can Andy Thomas make a note that as a governor of the Cornwall Partnership Trust, I shall not be voting on this agenda item.
Thank you. Councillor Mumford, please.
Just like to welcome this, and I would like to propose the recommendations.
Thank you.
I'll second those recommendations.
Thank you very much. So we have a proposer, recommendations, and a seconder. Are there any against the adoption of these recommendations? No. Then they're carried. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you for the short report, Aisling. So that comes to the end of part one reports that need decisions. We have various member updates in part two. And I thank the members, lead members, for those updates, which are already a huge improvement on what we've had before. So thank you for that. Are there any questions to any of the lead members, please, about their report? I think Councillor Mumford wanted to come in.
Yes, I'd just like to say that I haven't put a report in because I no longer have to do a report that's been decided by the corporate team. That's why my report is there. Because the minutes of scrutiny come, it seems pointless to do it twice. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mumford. No, we appreciate that and all the work you do for scrutiny, and obviously we get full reports from the scrutiny meeting. So thank you very much. Any other questions or comments, please? No? Well, thank you all very much indeed. Thank you for your attendance. And with that, I will close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman.